once again to the Necro Zoo. I am Bones. And in this one, let's go ahead and add one more figure to my McFarlane DC Multiverse collection. Now, today we will take a look at Superman in the animation style from the 1940s, otherwise known as the Fleischer Superman. Now, this is one of the more anticipated figures coming out from McFarlane, and a lot of people really excited to finally get this figure in hand. Now, me personally, not a huge fan of this version of Superman. Now, I do have to say, I have watched some of the Superman episodes from Fleischer before, and for its time, it is some really remarkable animation and cartoon styling that they did. Well made and stylized cartoon animation for the time, and some great stories and battles that they show in those cartoons. So, really cool. Always happy to add another Superman to my collection. And this really takes it back to a old school classic version of Superman. We'll go ahead and take a closer look at him. Didn't really have a lot of custom work to do on him. I did do one little detail and add some custom alternate hands. We'll get into all of that and have some fun with some figure photography. Now, he does look very powerful in the packaging, but let's go ahead and take a closer look at him. But first, of course, he does come with your standard black DC Multiverse stand. Now, this is not really needed, but sometimes they do come in useful. He also comes with his data file card. On the front, you have a stylized version reminiscent of the classic animation. Now, looking up this certain version of Superman, the source material is rather interesting because there will be different looks on the belt, on the details of him that you'll get with different variations of the artwork. Now, though this is a Superman from the same era, it is more from the comics, not so much from the animation. The figure is more representative of the animated style. So once again, artwork doesn't match exactly, but it is close enough, and it is very beautiful. If you take the image on the back of the box, that is a perfect one to cut out and frame up, or at least, hang on your wall, or even put behind the figure. That's a very nice little piece of artwork. Now on the back, you do have some information. Pretty cool. And as always, we'll hold on to this. Now, not too many accessories. He does come with two alternate open hands. Not really flying hands. These are more like floating hands, I would like to say, or even more just emoting hands. Like if he's going to throw a punch, he can have one of these hands out in front of him. So, not necessarily flying hands, but we will take a look at what you can do later on in the video. But always nice to get some alternate hands. Now, the alternate hands and, of course, the body are all very reminiscent of the Earth 2 Superman, but it is one of the more popular bucks that McFarlane makes for Superman. So let's go ahead and dive right in and take a closer look. Really well executed figure by McFarlane. Like I said, this is one of the first times where I don't really have too much negative stuff to say, or any like big custom work that you can do to make him better. This one is really close. I'd have to say, if I was going to give him anything, I would give him a 9.5 out of 10. Could have used some flying hands instead of those open hands. But aside that is so minimal. Another thing he could have had was a flight stand. But I mean, if you've been collecting McFarlane long enough, that should not be something that you really would complain about. Like me, I have so many that I just don't even use them, so it's not a big deal. But it would be cool for McFarlane to add a flight stand for those people that just want this figure on his own to pose or to have on their desk or for display. So I can see where that will add into not being a complete 10 out of 10. So no flight stand, no flying hands, but in the end, a very nice 9.5 out of 10 figure that you must have if you're a big Superman collector. Now, aside from that, great looking figure. The chest emblem is done in that old Fleischer style. Now, there could be different little alternate versions or alternate designs going through that 40s era, but the emblem is done really nice and really clean, very centered, very clean lines. Awesome, awesome emblem for that 1940s Fleischer Superman. I mean, I won't get too much into the articulation. Of course, we know this is the same body book we've seen before. Very nice tie in of the cape on the shoulders, and the trunks once again are done very nice and form fitting. Taking a closer look at the head sculpt really represents what you see in the Fleischer animation. Now, I was curious and I went back and looked up a lot of the older figures, like from DC Direct or statues, and I happened to notice that a lot of the a lot of those versions have like really squinty eyes. So that got me into looking up some of the artwork for this. And a lot of the times he does have a very minimal slither of eyes, which is just the way the artwork is represented. But if you do go back and look at those DC Directs, I think even one looks like he's completely asleep, and the other one has, the squinty eyed look. So I did see, some freaks online crying that his eyes were really sleepy. And oh, look at the eyes. I mean, come on, man. You guys always find something to complain about.
Because you freaking fricks just can't ever be quenched. Your fantasies can't ever be quenched, can they?
So as far as the eyes go, it does represent a majority of the artwork and the animation. DC Direct did it the same way. Now, I took a different approach to that because I felt like you could add a little bit of paint to it to make the eyes look a little bit more lively. And I did reference this in some of the artwork, but we'll take a look at that towards the end of the video. But he has a great head sculpt representing that Fleischer artwork. There is some head swapping that I have seen, but I kind of feel deep down that I'm going to keep this figure like this with this head sculpt, especially after I repainted it and touched it up a little bit. Really a perfect head sculpt for this figure. He does have nice articulation. You can look down really well. You can look up, great for flying poses. You got right to left. And of course, you could tilt the head for some character. Now, moving down, great emblem, really perfectly matched onto that chest. And once again, as I said, same articulation. You could splay out the arms. You got the waist articulation, a lot of movement there, minimal crunch, shoulder articulation, going down to the legs, slight thigh swivel. You can move the boot from side to side, double jointed knees, great articulation, straighten them out. Of course, you got that toe articulation. I mean, standard articulation from McFarlane, but it is very generous, a lot of range, a lot of motion, and even a lot of unassuming articulation that people don't give McFarlane a lot of credit for. So really happy with the articulation. Looks great. I mean, not much to talk about. One of the only things I did notice was that they made the wrist pins colored instead of making them flesh. And of course, I've talked about it before. That always depends on how the figure feels in hand. Sometimes the flesh tone wrist joints work, like with the Reeve Superman, and sometimes the colored wrist joints work. It makes it look like if the sleeve goes right up to the hand. Now, that kind of brings up, let's go ahead and bring out the original body of this figure, which was the Earth 2. Now, my version has the first appearance Superman, just a little bit of an alternate look. Now, doesn't matter. I have another one of these that I keep in its standard original release form. So, this is the one I have fun with, and he has that first appearance Superman head. If you look at the eyes, they're a little bit squinty as well, and I did do a little quick head swap because, of course, this head swap does make sense. It can make sense, so it's not something ludicrous or out of this world. It does fit on the same body, and even the style that it's in could work with this 1940s era Superman. Now, we did also have the Task Force Superman, which I do have, but I didn't want to bring him out. But what I did want to bring out is my custom best Superman ever that I made by using my extra Task Force Superman. Great Superman. I think this is pretty much my favorite Superman right now. Getting a lot of heavy rotation, and he looks great. So McFarlane really taking advantage and getting a lot of use out of that Earth 2 Superman body book. But there will not be any complaints because it is a perfect Superman body. Now let's get into a little bit of customizing. Not too much. What I went ahead and did with this Fleischer Superman head was that I did see some artwork where the eyes had like a little bit more of an iris, like you could see like a little bit more of a rounding off of the eye. And I really wanted to emulate that with this figure. Now, don't worry, I do have two more of these coming from Best Buy. So those should be coming, later on down the road. So I'm not too worried about it because I'll have one to play around with and touch up, which is this one. I'll have one to keep in his standard original form, and I will have one for my mint inbox collection. So don't worry, I'm going to have two more of these coming in the future. But as of now, I really wanted to change the eyes a little bit to give them a little bit more life. So as I said, I did find some artwork that showed a little bit more of a retina in there, and I did that on this figure. So if you look at it, you can see that now the eyes, don't look too sleepy. He does look a little bit more awake and gives it a little bit more character, a little bit more depth to the head sculpt. So that was pretty cool. Another thing I did was I added a little bit of dark paint around the hairline. I just felt like it was a little bit too like receding, like thin. And I just ran my paintbrush through the outline of the hairline, leaving a little thin line of black and giving it a little bit more fullness. So that's one of the major things I did, which isn't huge, but it does go into making it a better looking head sculpt. Now, the only other thing I wanted to do was add some hands. Of course, I added some flying hands. Now, these you can use to put them in some flying poses. You do feel like putting them on a flight stand. These will really help in figure photography if you want to, get them flying. So these are always useful. Of course, I have a container where I have tons of flesh colored hands, and I could just keep going back to that little container and pulling out hands that I want to use with different figures. Now, I did have to mod the porthole in the hand, make it a little bit wider so that it would fit on these wrist joints, but it was very simple. And for fun, I went ahead and added one more hand, which is an open kind of splayed hand. Now, this was cool to have them holding up a block of cement or a crashing building. A really cool hand that adds a lot more character. So that's another fun little touch that I added on my own. But anyways, guys, great looking figure. It is a pretty close to 10 out of 10 figures, just missing, like I said, the flight stand and maybe some flying hands would have been cool. That would definitely have made it a closer to a 10 out of 10 figure, but it is great for what it is, especially at, around $23. Very nice. But anyways, you guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.